An attempt to help the black community or a recruiting event for the Nation of Islam.
October 1995, Americans witnessed a unique event in the nation's history, something they have called the Million Man March. A million so-called black men, or at least it called a million black men, came to Washington. But did they come expecting to become a part of a radical international Islamic agenda? Chris Mitchell has details.
Many believe the hundreds of thousands of African-American men came primarily not because of Louis Farrakhan, but instead came because of a deep hunger for black unity and to promote the legitimate goals of increased responsibility, discipline, and self-reliance. But like it or not, when they came, they also got an introduction into Islam. Farrakhan's Nation of Islam comprises a tiny percentage of the millions of Muslims who live in the U.S. Muslims point out that the Islam practiced and preached by Louis Farrakhan is far different than the orthodox Islam practiced by millions around the world. But Farrakhan's Million Man March catapulted him center stage into the international arena of radical Islam, and the Million Man March was his ticket.
10 years ago, the Muslim leaders in the world wouldn't have given Farrakhan time of day. I think the Million Man March opened some eyes over there. For the first time, the call to prayer, the Islamic call to prayer was resounded over the nation's capital. Looking at just a million people, in the nation's capital listening to Farrakhan, it appeared, I guess, to some of the leaders overseas that these were either converts or people on their way to being converts. And so I think Farrakhan gained a great deal of respect.
Farrakhan's Islamic faith may be a strange brand of Islam, but Ellis says groups like the Nation of Islam often serve as a doorway for many into Orthodox Islam.
So I think Farrakhan has gotten a great deal of international stature because he appears to be a great tool in the effort of the Islamic community to bring America into the Islamic orbit.
Bringing America and the world into the Islamic orbit is the goal of radical Islam. Even moderate Muslims are targets of these countries, and these regimes particularly target Christians.
Every day, more Christians are being imprisoned, tortured, maimed, and killed for their faith than ever before in history. Islamic oppression is the leading cause.
For example, in the Sudan, a country Farrakhan has praised, the Islamic government condones slavery that has flourished within its borders.
We have a situation of modern-day slavery where Muslims, led by the National Islamic Front, are taking Christians and enslaving them by the thousands. Why he doesn't speak out against that, I don't know.
His recent African and Muslim World Friendship Tour conjured up visions of a worldwide Islamic revolution, a goal some aspire to in the Islamic world. In Iran, Farrakhan said, "God will not give Japan and Europe the honor of bringing down the United States. This is an honor God will bestow upon Muslims." In Malaysia, he said, "If we Muslims can come together all over the world, we could become the superpower of the 21st century." But when Farrakhan returned from his world tour, he defended his actions.
Because I am sure that God is well pleased with what I did and what I said.
And he explained the real purpose behind the $1 billion Muammar Gaddafi of Libya pledged to the Nation of Islam. Some believe Farrakhan's recent tour angered many men who came to the march. Julian Grant, a Christian businessman who protested the march, believes the event was just a ploy to recruit for the Nation of Islam and that it's already had an impact.
I can tell you effectively that a lot of young men are rolling out of the Christian churches and rolling into the mosques because they were effectively deceived by that march. They see Mr. Farrakhan as a national leader. He was perpetuated by that in the media, and because of that, they're following him as the new Pied Piper.
Many believe Farrakhan's Million Man March filled a vacuum left by the church, and that the march sounded a clear wake-up call to the church.
It was a wake-up call to the church because what happened was Islam drew the church to its event rather than the church drawing Islam to the church's event. Front and stage was another religion, and we followed. So that means that we were not being salt and light in the culture.
Evans and others believe a revived church is the only antidote to the influence of Farrakhan. He says Promise Keepers, a Christian men's movement, is one hopeful sign on the scene that addresses the hopes of the black community and responds to the attraction behind the Million Man March.
Well, I think it's attractive because it's challenged men to be men, exactly what Promise Keepers does. It's called men. It's gotten away from what, unfortunately, far too many churches have become, are passive institutions that invite people to sit, soak, and sour, rather than active institutions that are challenging men that make a change and also holding them accountable for the change that they commit themselves to making. And when you add accountability to it, like Promise Keepers does, it gives it significance. It makes it attractive to men.
Congress will hold potentially explosive hearings this month to determine whether Farrakhan broke U.S. laws during his recent foray through the Islamic world. Chris Mitchell, CBN News.
Thank you, Chris. Remember that he has a right to express his opinions, and this is a free country. He can visit wherever he can and wherever he wants to. The thing to be very careful of is that if foreign money begins to be used as an agent to bring down the American government, then that is a violation of law, and it must be dealt with as such. But he can say what he wants to. But one of the things you have to keep in mind is how can a man like Farrakhan do this when you can have a man like Alan Keyes arrested, a legitimate president of candidate of the United States, hauled off and dropped off in a poor neighborhood like he was a common criminal. It's that kind of thing that makes millions of not radical, but just routine black Americans very unhappy about what's going on.
Absolutely.
By the way, if you stay tuned, in the next hour, we'll have an in-depth report with some shocking video that you will not see in the national media about Mr. Farrakhan. That's all we have. Stay tuned. Don't forget, if you'd like to know more about radical Islam, you can call for a fact sheet, 1-800-716-FACT, and we'll get that to you right away. Don't forget, special report coming up. Stay tuned.
On the next News Watch today, they're so small they can fit inside a briefcase. Nuclear weapons are changing the face of terrorism. Tomorrow, we'll tell you who these high-tech rebels are and what the U.S. can expect in the future. Now, stay with us. Was Farrakhan's Million Man March actually a PR move for the Nation of Islam? Join us for an insightful interview with Glen Plummer, coming up on the 700 Club.
You continue on this special edition of the 700 Club. We're delighted you could join us. If you are just tuning across the dial, I want to encourage you, if you knew anybody that was at the so-called Million Man March, if your pastor was there or if your pastor has been speaking out in support of what happened there, we want to encourage you to call him and anyone else that you know who had anything to do with or who was concerned about the Million Man so-called march to watch this program today. We have an absolutely shocking video and an in-depth report on that.
I also want to mention that no matter what we do talk about on our program today, because we talk about lots of things during the time that we're with you, we want you to know that there is someone standing by, a person at the other end of that phone line that's on your screen that's waiting to hear from you. If you have a need in your life, you'd like a friend to pray with you, please call the number 804-420-0700. Just share what it is with the friend on the other end of the line. You don't have to say who you are or where you're from if you don't want to, but we'd like to pray with you about the things that are touching your life today. So call, please.
And call now. Well, earlier on News Watch today, we brought you a follow-up report on some of the results of Louis Farrakhan's so-called Million Man March. We want to take a closer look now at the man behind the message.
I'm hanging on a cross right now. I'm on Calvary right now. And I'm ready to go all the way. Because I know that by my stripes, every one one of you will be healed. You don't have to look anywhere for your Jesus. I represent him.
We would be remiss and considered ungrateful if we did not thank Allah for raising from the midst of us not one, but two Messiahs, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad and the honorable Louis Farrakhan.
Messiah, a man who claims to be, well, we'll talk more about that. Please join me now to discuss the Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam as the founder and CEO of the Christian Television Network in Southfield, Michigan, Mr. Glen Plummer. Glen, delighted to have you with us again. Thank you very much.
Good to be with you.
God bless you. Now, that is stuff you very seldom see, if ever, in the national media. Tell us a little bit more about that. I've never seen it before. That was news to me.
Yeah.
Where did you get, tell us a little bit about that tape.
First of all, we did I have a television station, as you know, in Detroit. We did a 5-day, 1 hour each day expose on Farrakhan entitled Farrakhan, Charismatic Beacon or Cult Leader. And we were given some footage, tapes, that the Nation of Islam themselves publish from their own sources, and I was shocked. Couldn't believe it, and so as we began to show these clips, we were inundated with calls from our viewers, people who said they couldn't believe it. Some people were upset, the Nation of Islam, of course, because frankly, the position is that Christians, our position is that Christians, especially black Christians, are completely unaware of his claim of being Jesus, and he actually claims that. In fact, during about the fourth day of
run that by me again. Or are you saying that he's not just claiming to be a representative, as he said, he said, I'm hanging on Calvary now, I'm on the cross now,
well, first
by
of all,
my stripes?
Yeah, by my stripes, every one of you shall be healed. The introduction that you just saw, that was him being introduced by the national spokesperson for the Nation of Islam.
As a Messiah.
As the Messiah. But beyond, that alone ought to just stop everybody cold in their track. I mean, that all by itself. But beyond that, Farrakhan, and not only him, but this is a fundamental doctrine of the Nation of Islam that, frankly, is unknown by and large by the nation, certainly by black Americans.
Has his message changed over the years, or is this what has been from the beginning?
First of all, if you, and I'm not an expert, incidentally, on the Nation of Islam. Let me say that. If I'm an expert on anything, it's that I'm a sinner saved by the grace of God. However, years ago, Louis Farrakhan, as well as members of the Nation of Islam, used to say the Bible was written by the white man, Christianity is a white man's religion, and this was just espoused all the time. You don't hear him say that too often anymore. In fact, I would say the past 2-3 years at the top, you hear this man quoting Jesus. You hear him talking about Jesus all the time. You hear him quoting from the Bible. You never hear him virtually quote from the Quran. He quotes the parables of Jesus. He even quotes from the epistles. He talks in wonderful, glamoring ways about Jesus Christ.
Why?
Well, very frankly, when he says Jesus, the issue is what Jesus is he talking about? Now, we've got some... Now, most folks think that he's talking about the same one that we worship and that we serve, but, he makes a great distinction between the Jesus that he calls of 2,000 years ago and the real Jesus today.
I think we have that on tape. Let's take a look now at another message from Mr. Farrakhan.
That 75% of what you read in the Bible referring to Jesus is referring to a future man. And 25% of what you read is referring to the man of 2,000 years ago who is considered a type. A type is like a sign of the real. But the real question is, who is Jesus? If the scholars agree that the Jesus of 2,000 years ago prefigured or gave us a picture of the real Jesus, then the historical Jesus is not the real Jesus, but the real Jesus is the one that the historical Jesus prefigures or gives us a type of. The historical Jesus was not the Messiah. The prophetic Jesus is the Messiah. The historical Jesus prefigured the Messiah. And that's why the Jews have never accepted the historical Jesus. They continue to look for the Messiah. They are not wrong. He wasn't born in Bethlehem of Judea. He was born in Sandersville, Georgia.
Now, is that a classic?
Well, that's news to me, man.
Classic.
I'm had to make a pilgrimage to Sandersville. I mean, how have I been so... What?
Unbelievable. Now, keep in mind that for the past year especially, and even the past 2 years, his audience has grown enormously. And the great majority of his audience are basically black church folk, black Christians, who are out there applauding, out there saying amen, people who think he's basically coming around now. He's coming around to what we believe as the church. There's nothing that could be farther from the truth.
This sounds like a classic case of, on the part of those people who are amening this, of classical biblical illiteracy combined with the fact that they don't really know what his message is.
Well, it's a classic case of deception is what it is. Here's an individual who clearly is not a Christian. Here's an individual who frankly believes that he is the Messiah. He believes that he is Jesus, as you'll see on this next clip. I mean, he says it.
Well, let's go to the next clip now, and rather than take Glen Plummer's word for it, let's see what he has to say.
When you close the Old Testament, you open the New Testament with the genealogy of Jesus. But the Old Testament closes saying Elijah's coming. My God is coming. Then you open up with the genealogy of Jesus. So who is Jesus? Who is Elijah? Jesus and Elijah one and the same. I am that Elijah that was to come and now is.
Now, Ben, it is simple math. He says Jesus and Elijah are one and the same. And then he says, I am Elijah. Now, you don't have to be a brain surgeon to put this together, that this man claims to be Jesus. As a matter of fact, when we did this expose, the fourth day, of course, it was a live show. We had phone calls, and so one of the calls was from the head of the Nation of Islam in Detroit, which incidentally is where the Nation of Islam was founded. Mm-hmm. He called me, and he was a bit upset because I am taking the very strong, clear position that Louis Farrakhan is a cult leader in every sense of the word. And frankly, the Nation of Islam is a cult in every sense of the word.
And it must be clearly pointed out that this is not what is known as Orthodox traditional Islam. Even the traditional Orthodox Muslims recognize that this is not Orthodox Islam.
Well, the main reason is because Orthodox Islam does not believe that God manifested himself in the flesh. And of course, we as Christians do. We believe Jesus Christ has. The Nation of Islam also believes that God manifested himself in the flesh through a man by the name of Farad Muhammad back in the 1930s, who founded the Nation of Islam, and then of course Elijah Muhammad came
Wallace
after.
Poole.
Yeah, but let me finish making the point about this fellow in Michigan. He is the head of the Nation of Islam in Michigan. On the phone, we discussed it. He was a bit disheveled about this whole thing we did, and so he said that I was unprincipled. I said, well, why do you say I'm unprincipled? He says, well, because you suggest that we are a cult, and the suggestion of being a cult says that we are intentionally deceiving people. I said, that's exactly what you all are doing. I said, let me ask you a question. Do you believe, this is exactly how I asked him, do you believe Louis Farrakhan is Jesus? And he said, yes. I said, you're telling me that those Christian ministers that have aligned themselves with Louis Farrakhan and have stood publicly, you're telling me they know that? I don't believe it. He says, well, yeah, they know it. I said, that isn't true. I just can't believe that. I won't believe that. Now, I basically challenge my brethren who have aligned themselves with him, that if they know this, something needs to be said here and something needs to be done. I don't think they know it. I don't think that they, in fact, if you ask any member of the Nation of Islam, do you believe Louis Farrakhan is Jesus? They'll shuffle a bit and they'll try and sidestep the question. If you ask them point blank, do you believe Louis Farrakhan is Jesus? The answer will be yes.
Mr. Director, you re-rack that last clip. I want us to show that one more time to make sure. But let me ask you this. What should church leaders be doing? I mean, what should the Christian community be doing about this? Or should they be doing anything about it?
Well, certainly. There's a number of things. First of all, the reason why he's gotten so much prominence and so much acceptance is because he does deal with an issue in the nation, particularly racism. And he's touched a chord and a nerve in this nation. And because of that, because it has not been repented for as a national sin, which it really is, because it still hasn't been dealt with, he has gotten black Christians particularly kind of siding with him because he nails racism, I mean, to the wall. But the problem is, the issue really is not racism right now with what I'm dealing with. The issue is that we're dealing with a man who is a cult leader. And the first thing is that we ought not align ourselves with him. Now, can we work together in a community and feed the hungry? Yes, we can do that side by side. But let's understand that we have a great difference. And as long as we all understand who he is and who he says he is and who the rest of those folk that are with him say he is, then let's work together. But until then, frankly, we won't sit down together. That's my position. So first of all, I don't think that we should be sitting with him. I don't think we should be aligning ourselves. We should not be supporting any million man, million family, or million any other kind of march that he may have until it's very clearly understood, especially in the black community, that this man is dangerous. He is a cult leader, and he certainly is not exalting the one to whom has given his life for us.
I'm sure it's one more time. We'll make sure that you understand that we're not saying something. We want you to hear from his own lips what he has to say.
When you close the Old Testament, you open the New Testament with the genealogy of Jesus. But the Old Testament closes saying Elijah's coming. God, my God, is coming. Then you open up with the genealogy of Jesus. So who is Jesus? Who is Elijah? Jesus and Elijah, one and the same. I am that Elijah that was to come and now is.
For ministers of the gospel who are partakers of that, they literally become partakers of the sin of blasphemy. If your pastor and you as a Christian are supporting and amening that, then you need to be very careful that you understand who he believes he is and who his followers believe he is, and that is the classic definition of a cult, because he himself raises the question, and that is the question that Jesus Christ himself is going to raise. Who do men say that I am? Is it Jesus Christ, the Son of God, who was in fact and indeed born in Bethlehem, or was he born in Georgia? It was pointed out. You have to make that decision, ladies and gentlemen, and that is up to you. By the way, there's going to be another gathering in Washington, and this time it's going to be not a million men. It's going to be millions of people gathering in Washington for Jesus. That's April the 29th and 30th, and you need to be making your plans to come. We need to call America back to God. The April the 29th and 30th, there's a telephone number on your screen, 1-800-495-5288. Let me point out that Glen Plummer has, Christian Television Network in Detroit, has done an outstanding tape, Farrakhan, Charismatic Beacon or Cult Leader. And you call 804-420-0700, and we will tell you how to get this available. And you can show this in your home and in your churches, and you don't have to take our word for it. Take his word for it. Glen Plummer, thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks, Ben.
Pleasure to have you. Always. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, hang on to your seats, ladies and gentlemen. We have the story of a crash landing and a survivor. An amazing account of an escape from